Thank you for turning to page 121. Today is my 100th uploaded video, and we're all pretty darn excited around here. And by we all, of course, I mean me, since I'm a one-man operation. But this is my 100th uploaded video. I'm pretty excited about that. I never actually gave it any thought if I'd make it here or not. But here I am. So today, in the 100th episode, we're going to take a look at Traveler, Atlas of the Imperium. It's an interesting book that was published by GDW. I want to take a look at the inside and just show how it was done in the days before you go on the internet. So today, GDW's Traveler Atlas of the Imperium on page 121. Atlas of the Imperium by Game Designers Workshop. This was a 1984 offering from GDW. And the idea was, again, they were moving away from the LBBs, the little black books. They want to give us a look at the Imperium as a whole. So I'm going to go ahead and show a little bit inside, and then I'm going to have to cut to some close-ups, and you'll see why in a moment. Okay, so inside are the sectors of the Imperium and the surrounding space. So there's our sectors, and now we cut what this does. So the idea of this book is to show pretty much all of the charted space in a very quick thumbnail sketch. You would take a look at what was presented, and then you would later flesh out all the details in your UPP, Universal Planetary Profile, or UWP as it came to be known, Universal World Profile, and you would then decide what each world had individually. The interesting thing about this book is right at the beginning, they talk about what had gone before. I'm going to go ahead and lay this down so we can read it a little bit better. So what had gone before was all the stuff that had appeared before that's regurgitated in this book. So in the Atlas of the Imperium was designed by Mark Miller. Old Expanses was by Jim Cunningham and Gordon Sheridan, and they originally appeared in the High Passage magazine. So as you see, there's a listing here of where everything had appeared before that's then later in this book. The interesting thing is the Ley Sector and Glimmerdrift reaches were originally published by Judges Guild. The sectors in this atlas retain the names but are entirely newly generated. They effectively supersede the Judges Guild's products. So if you saw my video on Judges Guild, I talked about this. And here we have Judges Guild was only about 3 years old, 2 years old in some of these cases, and it's already been bumped into non-canon. If you're like me, canon means very little. So I was never worried about that, but it's just interesting that here it is. So you get your layout here of where everything had appeared in what book, and the only stuff that's been taken from being canon is the Judges Guild stuff. Everything else stayed canon. So now we go to mapping the Imperium, and it talks about how you use it for Traveler. And then this is the first survey, which was done in 990. The second survey was finally published in 1065. So this information is roughly 50 years old by the time the Traveler would need it. And then the Atlas for the Imperium is for use with Traveler. And then how to use the Atlas. What they did in this, rather than give full UPPs on everything, this book would be massive, they went ahead and they did a brief version of it. So what they do is they have the data, and the data is listed out as each square on the map represents a parsec, which is 3.27 light years. This is different than a lot of other Traveler products. In fact, it's the only one I remember doing it this way. And then the data is brought to you in symbols. So a solid dot indicates a world with water present. Open circles indicate desert worlds. Group of dots indicates that the asteroid belt. So the upper dot is a gas giant symbol. So you can do wilderness refueling. So then everything after that would really be up to you to flesh out. The only other thing they really call out is if a sector has a name in it instead of a number, then it's got at least 1 billion inhabitants, and that's why it's a named sector. So it was pretty interesting to do it this way, but it did leave a lot of work for the DM to flesh out the rest of the world. But I'm going to show you a page now, and you'll understand a little bit more of what I'm talking about. There you go. Each of these little boxes is a parsec. When I first started researching this, to do this video. I, of course, have had this book since the 80s. And I have to tell you, I never used it all that much because of how it was presented. And at first I thought, well, why would I even bother doing a video on this? It's kind of incomprehensible. And then I stopped and I thought, wait a minute. This was before good computers. I'm sure this was done on some kind of computer, but in the mid-80s, early to mid-80s, computers were not very good. And then I started thinking about the just staggering amount of work that each of these pages represents. And once I kind of wrapped my head around that, I thought, okay, I have to honor Mark Miller's work on this at least, because if nothing else, this was just a tremendous body of work. So I'm going to go ahead and move us into the Imperium. We've got the empty quarter, which is aptly named. If something has no designation, they didn't number it, and of course that means that there's nothing there. There's no inhabitable system, there's no nothing. Okay, so we're going to go to my old friend Core. Core is pretty safe to start with, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom in on some of this, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the symbology. All right, we're going to take a look at Umgaden, which is one of the named sectors. It's really hard to see on the tiny little sheet, but I've blown it up here for you. So UMGADIN, Umgaden, has a Class B starport. It does have wilderness refueling, but it is a desert world or it has a low hydrographic reach. That's it. That's all we know about that world. Everything else has to be fleshed out by you. Now, if you look in the upper right from Umgaden, you go to 2419. 2419 has a triangle pointing right. That shows us they've got a scout base. They also have a Class A starport there, and the solid dot represents a world with water, but no gas giant for wilderness refueling. So you could see where you could use this information. We're going to go down from 2419. We'll go down to 2422. So that's got, sorry, there's a lot of little jumbles here I've got to figure out. So that's got a 2422, has a Class A starport. It has a gas giant for wilderness refueling. It has water. And then it's got the little star, and looking on my little chart, which my little chart is not showing what the star does. There it is. Solid stars indicate Imperial Naval Base. So there is an Imperial Naval Base at this planet, but importantly, it's not named. Therefore, it's got a population of less than 1 billion in the system. So it was an interesting convention to give us just a thumbnail on what this was, and then let us go ahead and complete the world profile on our own. I ended up, because of that, this book didn't see a lot of use on my table. And like I said, when I was researching this video, I thought, well, why would I even do a video about this? But then I thought about the stunning amount of work that this represents. And just this information brought on such a mammoth scale. I'm going to move it over here. You can see some others. Let's take a look at Shabashalim. I mean, these are just, it's astonishing. It's Class B starport with an Imperial base, a gas giant, and water. And because it's named, it's got a population of at least 1 billion. It really opened the door if you were in one area. The other problem is, because of how this is, you don't have any jump routes. You'd have to figure out jump routes on your own too. So there is good and bad with this. It's, again, I just want to take a moment and just appreciate the staggering amount of work this would have represented back in the 80s. Now we have access to the Traveler map. If you saw my video on the Traveler map, you know that all this information is there, but everything's at your fingertips. And all the canon or non-canon, as you choose to use it, information for every world, every star system is brought out there. So this was an amazing piece of work for today. It is on Mark Miller's FFE, Far Future Enterprises website. It's under the Classic Traveler CD or thumbnail, or thumb drive rather. You also got your own little blank here. I'll pull out on that. You got a blank sheet, and you had permission to Xerox that if you wanted. And now we come to the last, and here is where everything is located alphabetically. So if you need to find it, it's located on whatever page it's on. So very little verbiage in here. Tremendous amount of work in here. I am amazed that they were able to accomplish this comprehensively from stuff from the early 80s, using tech from the early 80s. That's just a tremendous body of work. So, do I use this a lot on my table? Not really, especially with the Traveler map available on the internet. Before the internet, this saw some use. It was never one that I had on the table all the time, but when I was setting up the campaign and my core information had to be developed, I did bring this out. So it is available on FFE's website. It's also available for about $10 on DriveThruRPG. Pretty cool product overall. There's the back of it. And so there you have the Atlas of the Imperium. Just a tremendous body of work that I'm amazed they were able to accomplish in the early 80s, early or mid 80s, 84. But there you have it. So if you have any interest in it, it is available. Go ahead and pick it up. Do like the cover art. And that's it for me today. That's it for episode 100 on page 121. Thanks for sticking with me, and I look forward to doing a couple hundred more. Thank you.